What's up, video game junkies? So this really is just meant to be an intro into a new video series that I want to start. This video is basically being done based on request. I actually get 2 requests very often. The first would be for Sonic 06, which I'll probably never do because it's already taken too many hours from my life. And then, of course, the other thing would be Sonic Comics. People always ask me if I read them or what my thoughts are on them, and well, yeah, I do read them, of course. But on another note, a lot of people don't even know about the comic series. Even fans of Sonic the Hedgehog don't know about this series. And trust me, the plot here is much better than Sonic turning into a werehog or taking part in bestiality. Though I guess Sonic and Sally, that's more interspecies. Is that still considered bestiality? Whatever. The point is that the plot behind this is much better than Sega has ever done. Either way, the comics have a great plot and a great story, so I thought it would be fun to cover the series and just review the comic books. What I plan to do is review 4 comics in a video. I'll kind of talk about artists, the story, who wrote what, and maybe even discussing my favorite artists, storytellers, and things of that nature. Though when it comes to artists, it's Spaz. Hands down, so that's answered. I plan to review 4 at a time, because that way you guys can pick up one of the archives as we go along. The series, for the most part, has been compiled into graphic novels, and each graphic novel spans 4 comic books. And these are actually really easy to find compared to trying to find each individual old comic book. I may give away some comic books as we go along. I do have a lot of duplicates that I can do that with. I can discuss new releases because Sonic Comics is always busy with new material. Whether it's from the main series, super specials, spin-offs, individual stories like Knuckles, Tails, Sally, Sonic X, Sonic Universe, and there's even much more than that. And I will also discuss how this all relates to the Sonic Saturday AM cartoon. I don't know if any of you remember that. I also want to touch on video games and figurines that relate to the series as we go forward. I may save that for one whole separate series though, because I think having a video game with all the comic book characters would be such an amazing idea. And I have a lot of thoughts on that and history to share on that actual subject matter. I'd also like to do a super time-lapse video that I could probably pop in here or some other location that you can click out to, which would be me just redrawing one of the 4 comics or something that's related to the comic book series. I'm just trying to figure out how to make this as entertaining as possible for you. But to go ahead and get us launched into this new video series that I plan on doing, let's do a quick overview of its origins and how it all got started. I want to get your minds wrapped around the ideas and how Sonic Comics got started. And then in the next video, I will start by reviewing the Sonic mini-series that released before the actual run and launch Sonic Comics. If you want to be able to read it before I even review it, the archive is called The Beginning. There is an archive version of this that comes in this size. Otherwise, there is this one. I would recommend the smaller one though, especially if you plan to get the whole set. So that way they'll all be uniform and match these. This was actually released before they even did the archives. I don't think they had planned to do them, so that's why mine is so large. But there is a miniature version of this that goes straight into those. Okay, so let's jump into this. In 1993, a cartoon came along known as Sonic the Hedgehog. You can actually buy it, the complete series. It's not very large, but you can actually buy the complete series on DVD, so this is it here, in case you're curious. Now, there were many other Sonic cartoons, but this is the one that set the tone and the mood for what became of Sonic Comics. It was honestly a fairly dark cartoon compared to most. Its setting took place in a post-apocalyptic world called Mobius. And of course, over time, Robotnik has destroyed it, and that's why it is in this post-apocalyptic state. It is actually a deep plot that goes back even before that. It involved a war called the Great War, and Robotnik helped this war by contributing his army of SWAT bots, which are just these robots. And due to him helping them, they actually won the war. But in the aftermath of all of that, Robotnik overthrew the king of Mobius and became the new ruler. Robotnik had also captured Sonic's uncle, and Sonic's uncle had created a device that could roboticize the animals. It was actually meant to prolong one's life and to help them stay strong. But of course Robotnik stole it and found a way to completely roboticize people and then of course completely take their free will from them. In the process of doing this, he also roboticized Uncle Chuck. Now the daughter of the former king teamed up with Sonic the Hedgehog and they formed a team called the Freedom Fighters. And really from there, the rest is what you would expect. Just little tiny victories for the Freedom Fighters. But the show really focused on the drama of what war does to friendships and people's emotions. It definitely stayed comical, but it really had a more serious side to it. I can discuss more plot points as we go on with the series, but that's the basic concept that you need to grasp. From there, though, the comic book series took the show's concepts and continued to elaborate. The comic actually was released before the TV show in 1992, even though the show was already in works before its original air date. And the comic book was based off of the show's ideas even before the show had its first episode. Confusing, right? So it's really based on the TV show, even though the comic book came first. Now the comic books, they definitely started off a bit more lighthearted and funny. Sonic constantly was breaking the fourth wall, and Robotnik, he just came off as a kiddie cartoon bad guy. He seemed to lack true motivation, aside from just disliking that hedgehog. At the beginning of the series, each comic book seemed to stand alone. You could really jump in at any point in the comic book series, because it was kind of like a cartoon where it always ended on a normal note, where it returned back to the way it was at the beginning of the episode. The stories usually just consisted of a quick fight with Robotnik while Robotnik got away in the end. This, therefore, kept giving the Freedom Fighters small victories throughout the series. And it worked at first. I mean, it was enough to keep the readers involved just due to the silly puns and the humor. But as this series went on, the show was eventually canceled. And from there, the comics definitely got a lot more serious. Each comic after that led into the next comic book, and missing an issue could really set off some major confusion. From there, the comics dived into the Great War and explained it a lot deeper. It went into talking about Sonic's family, and really ultimately just making the series that much more alive. It would talk about the struggle of war and how it affected characters, such as Antoine, who went from a little scaredy baby into this great hero. Or even how relationships were affected based on the war, such as people as simple as Sonic and Sally. And even to this day, this series is still going. And to this day, it's still filled with humor, heartbreak, victories, defeats, and overall just an amazing plot. Even just thinking of where Sally is now in the comic book series is a huge deal. Or maybe even the turmoil that Charmy the Bee went through. And that's clearly why this is the longest running comic book series based on a video game character. The main series alone is about to break 250 issues, and that's not even including the side stories like we talked about. It's just one of those things that really matured with the audience and grew with us if you started from the beginning. And it's definitely a much better story than Sega could ever dare to tell. Maybe Sega should reach out to the writers of this and ask them to write a story. Wouldn't be a bad idea. But really, that gives you an idea of how it all started and how it's based off of the original Sonic the Hedgehog cartoon. Next video, I'll start with the miniseries and review it, which contains issues 0 through 3, which came before the main series, which then again started at 1. Those comics are really hard to find if you want to check them out yourself. I'm still actually missing one of them in the set. But like I said, you could pick this up, and it has them all in their archive, and you can check it out for yourself. But this is what I'll be reviewing from. Now also, if you're a fan of the Sonic Comics series, the series has released some really awesome things in the past few years, even just this year alone. There's two that I want to talk about here. The first one would be the Sonic Genesis hardcover book, and I highly recommend this to fans and even to people who aren't fans of the series. It actually has a way of bringing new readers into it without being totally confused, so it honestly could be a good starting point if you haven't read the series before. It also includes backstory with events of what happened to Knothole, what happened to Sally, so that way you kind of understand what's happened in the past issues and you can jump right in from here. And of course you can also buy the individual comics that are in that series right now because they're not as hard to find. And they're actually really cool covers that are based on the old Sega Genesis cartridges. So even in that alone, as a Sonic fan, it's definitely a cool collector's item to have. Now the last thing I have to talk about would be the Sonic Encyclopedia. The fact is that after 250 issues, the plot has gotten really convoluted, and it can become hard to keep up with key plot points and characters. Sometimes old foes will come into effect after 100 issues of not even being around. So this would give you the chance to go back, learn about certain characters, key points, and things of that nature, and even the first comic book that character was in. I mean, hell, it even has world maps of Mobius and a timeline telling exactly how the world started. And that timeline is good for new fans because it even goes through from the beginning of time to when the comic started, all the way through the series, really giving people a grasp of what had happened. But there is one thing I must say. Archie Sonic Comics, if you're watching this, do me a favor and turn to page 10, this page here, with Rotor. Actually, I'll bring this up closer to the camera. Just start right here at Win. Oh. That's funny. Where'd the rest of the sentence go? Seriously, what happened there? So you may want to wait for a reprint of this. I haven't read through the whole thing, so I'm sure there's little errors here and there, and that's to be expected with such a large book. But yeah, you dropped some letters on that there, Sonic Comics letter droppers. Of course, this doesn't even include the new Sonic Magazine style comic books, Sonic Select, Knuckles Archive, Sonic's Archive, and the new Super Digests. There's just so much to grab a hold of right now in this series. And I would love to touch base on a little bit of that all, if you guys are interested in it. Okay, for now, that was just meant to be a precursor for this show, and to kind of give you an idea of what to expect, like I said. Ultimately, I just wanted to see what you guys think of this series. Let me know if there are any things that you'd like me to touch on, or if you have input for the new series. But I did want to upload this first, so I could gain your input on my new series. I also want my main viewers to know that I have written the script for the new Resident Evil review, so I'll be able to continue that series. I just want people to know that it can get a little demanding to do YouTube while having to replay games, writing scripts, recording gameplay and footage, working, and just keeping up with my normal life. Because I really do enjoy doing these videos for you. It's just sometimes life comes first. Yeah. But other than that, that's it. That's the beginning of this new series. Let me know what you guys think. I shall see you video game junkies later. Goodbye.
Trevor Clark has had his say to help you find good games to play. Game reviews, tattoos, and news. Pawning noobs you'll never